The jungle stretched endlessly before them, a tangled maze of green shadows and whispered dangers. The air hung thick with humidity and the weight of unspoken fears. The SEAL team moved as one, silent and unseen, their footsteps muffled by layers of fallen leaves and moss. Their mission was simple on paper, but far from easy to execute. Deep behind enemy lines, they were hunting a high-value target, a figure so well protected that intelligence believed no one had ever come close. Without hesitation, the team pressed forward, each member knowing that failure was not an option. The darkness was their ally as they slipped through the undergrowth. Eyes scanning every shadow, every sound ahead, the sniper known to them only as Ghost led the way. A woman. A few words, her presence was felt, more than heard. She was a legend within their unit, a master of blending into the environment and striking with deadly precision. Tonight she was the spearhead, the unseen force clearing the path for the team to follow. The radio crackled softly, carrying her calm, steady voice back to the squad who relied on her updates and keen eye. Suddenly the forest seemed to shift, as if the very air held its breath. Something was wrong. The connection to Ghost vanished. Without warning, the radio was silent. A void where her voice once was. Panic was the last thing the team needed, but it crept in at the edges. The SEALs glanced at one another, searching for answers, none forthcoming. The leader of the unit signaled to halt, and they crouched low, waiting and listening, straining their ears against the symphony of the jungle birds, insects, and distant rustling. The seconds dragged on endlessly. The radio remained dead. The thought that Ghost had been compromised crossed every mind, but no one dared speak it aloud. They had trained for this. The unknown was always part of the game, but the absence of their sniper was a wound too deep to ignore. The mission depended on Ghost. She was their eyes and shield in the dark territory. Every movement, every step felt heavier without her precision covering fire. The team debated their next move in whispers, calculating risks and outcomes, but the answer was clear: move forward or risk losing everything they chose. The path of courage edging closer to the enemy stronghold. The jungle closed in around them, branches clawing at faces and uniforms. The oppressive silence was punctuated only by the occasional call of a distant animal or the snap of a twig underfoot. Air smelled of damp earth and decay, but beneath it something darker lingered. The enemy was near, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every shadow could hide a threat, every leaf could conceal a trap. Their senses sharpened to a razor edge, waiting for the first sign of hostility. As they neared a clearing, the faint glow of lanterns flickered in the distance. The compound was bigger than expected, fortified with barbed wire and guarded towers. The SEALs adjusted their positions, studying the perimeter, mapping out patrol routes and potential weaknesses. Without their sniper, the challenge grew exponentially. Each man knew the risk, each heartbeat measured against the cold calculus of survival. A call came from the radio, but it was static, more frustrating than reassuring. Then a sudden noise erupted from the tree line, a shout and the sharp report of gunfire. Chaos exploded around them as enemy soldiers scrambled into action. The SEALs dove for cover, but the silence of the jungle was shattered, now replaced with the harsh crack of bullets and the angry shouts of combat. The enemy had been alerted to their presence, but in the midst of the firefight, a strange thing happened. Shots rang out, distant, precise, and deadly. One after another, the enemy fell without a sound from the team, until finally the leader realized Ghost was still fighting her own battle alone, somewhere out there. Invisible, untouchable, deadly. The thought gave hope and fear at once. Hope, because she was alive, and fear, because if she was out there alone, the danger was greater than they had imagined. The firefight intensified, each second a blur of motion and adrenaline. The team pushed forward, covering each other and taking down enemies as best they could. But the question of where Ghost was and how she managed to strike with such accuracy hung over them like a storm cloud. The jungle seemed to close in tighter, and the shadows grew longer. The enemy was regrouping, and the SEALs needed their sniper more than ever. But would she return to them, or had the jungle finally swallowed the Ghost whole? The SEAL team pressed deeper into the enemy compound, their breaths shallow, their hearts pounding like drums in the oppressive silence that had fallen after the initial firefight. The jungle had swallowed the sounds of battle, leaving only the faintest echoes that hinted at danger lurking just beyond sight. The radio remained frustratingly silent. No word from Ghost, no sign of her presence, and yet the distant crack of gunfire rang out, cutting through the tension like a knife. The team froze, their eyes scanning the dense foliage as if willing the unseen sniper to reveal herself. Each report was impossibly precise. One enemy after another fell silently as if picked off by a shadow. The SEALs exchanged glances, their disbelief barely masked by grim determination. Ghost was alive and fighting, but where was she hiding? The compound was a maze of dark corners, high walls, and twisted metal making every step a gamble. The enemy tightened their grip, responding with a fury that threatened to overwhelm. The SEALs fought tooth and nail, but the advantage seemed to swing back and forth with every heartbeat. Their leader barked orders, moving the men into tighter formations, covering all angles, but the mysterious sniper continued her deadly assault from an unknown position. The team was caught between relief and frustration, their own efforts overshadowed by the precision of Ghost's unseen hand. The jungle air thickened with smoke and tension, and every moment stretched longer than the last. The SEALs knew they had to find her or risk being cut down without their silent guardian. Suddenly, a figure emerged. Briefly, from behind a crumbling wall, a flash of movement so swift it was almost a trick of the light. But it was her Ghost, the sniper herself. Her silhouette barely visible yet commanding every eye on the squad. She gestured frantically, signaling, positions pointing to enemy snipers perched high in the towers. She was alive and dangerous, but before the team could move to her aid, an explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying and shaking the earth beneath them. The shockwave threw men to the dirt, and the radio screeched with static. Again, cutting off their lifeline to Ghost, chaos erupted once more. Bullets whizzed through the air, and the enemy pressed their advantage. The SEALs scrambled for cover, hearts racing and muscles tensed, waiting for the invisible bullets that seemed to come from nowhere. One by one, the enemy combatants fell, struck down by shots so clean and precise they seemed almost supernatural. The team fought desperately to regroup, but the fear of losing their sniper lingered heavy in every breath. The smoke and dust swirled, and amidst the confusion, Ghost's voice crackled faintly on the radio, just long enough to give coordinates, before silence swallowed her words again. The team hesitated no longer. They followed the coordinates, moving cautiously through the labyrinthine compound. Their eyes peeled for traps and ambushes. Every step was calculated, every breath held, as they closed in on the position Ghost had indicated. The sounds of battle faded into the background, replaced by an eerie quiet. The walls around them seemed to close in, and the jungle encroached like a living thing waiting to strike. Suddenly, a sharp whistle sliced through the air, a warning that the enemy was aware of. Their advance, in an instant, the SEALs found themselves under fire from hidden positions. The enemy snipers had taken up new vantage points, determined to stop the team from reaching Ghost. The firefight escalated into a deadly dance, the SEALs moving, with practiced precision suppressing enemy fire while inching closer to their lost comrade. The adrenaline burned in their veins, and the line between fear and courage blurred. The jungle seemed to pulse with the energy of the fight, and every heartbeat counted as they pushed through. Then the unimaginable happened. Ghost appeared again like a phantom from the shadows, taking out enemy marksmen one after another. Her rifle barked with deadly accuracy, and her movements were fluid and uncatchable. She covered the team, clearing a path with deadly efficiency, but it was clear she was fighting a battle far beyond what they had expected. The wounds on her gear told a story of close calls and narrow escapes, but her eyes burned with determination, unbroken and unyielding. As the last sniper fell, the SEALs finally reached Ghost, her breathing heavy, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, but her spirit unbroken. She relayed urgent information about enemy positions and plans, revealing the layers of deception they had stumbled into. The mission was far from over, and the enemy was preparing for something far more dangerous than a simple defense. The team regrouped, their resolve hardened, knowing that every second counted and the true battle was still ahead. But the question lingered like a shadow. What had driven Ghost to fight alone, and how much longer could she hold the line? The team gathered in the dim light of the jungle canopy, their breaths heavy with exhaustion and adrenaline. Ghost leaned against a fallen tree, her eyes scanning the darkness ahead. Her voice was steady but laced with urgency through the crackling radio. She relayed critical intel that shifted the mission's entire focus. The enemy was not simply guarding a compound. They were preparing for an assault, something catastrophic that could tip the balance of power in the region. The SEALs absorbed the information, every detail etched into their minds, ready to adapt and survive, but none of them could shake the feeling that time was slipping away faster than they could move. Ghost's presence was a beacon in the suffocating darkness. Yet there was an unspoken tension in the air. Her wounds told stories of close calls and relentless pursuit. But what gnawed at the team was the question of why she had been operating alone, why she had disappeared into the shadows without a word. It was as if she carried a burden too heavy to share a secret, locked behind eyes that had seen too much. The radio crackled once more, and Ghost's voice cut through the silence, calm but urgent. She was coordinating the team's movements, guiding them with pinpoint accuracy through a labyrinth of danger and deception. The team moved cautiously, following her lead deeper into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The jungle around them seemed alive, watching, waiting. Every rustle, every snap of a branch could signal an ambush, or worse. The shadows lengthened as dusk approached, and the air grew colder, carrying a hint of smoke and something metallic. The SEALs tightened their grip on their weapons, their senses razor-sharp, prepared for anything, but the silence was deceptive, a calm before a storm that promised to break with devastating force. Suddenly, a distant explosion shattered the quiet. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the sky lit up with flashes of fire. The enemy had initiated their plan, and the SEALs were caught in the crossfire. The compound erupted into chaos, flames licking at the sky, and the sounds of battle crashing like thunder around them. The team scrambled for cover, but Ghost was already moving ahead, her silhouette cutting through the smoke and debris with unmatched determination. She took out enemy snipers with surgical precision, buying precious seconds for the squad to regroup. Through the haze, a faint voice crackled over the radio. Ghost's calm, steady tone guided them to a hidden bunker beneath the ruins, a place rumored to hold the key to the enemy's plans. The team followed her directions, navigating twisted metal and shattered stone, the air thick with dust and the acrid sting of gunpowder. Every step brought them closer to the heart of the operation, and deeper into danger. The bunker's entrance was concealed, but Ghost's eyes missed nothing. She signaled, and the SEALs moved in silent and swift. Inside the bunker, the air was cool and stale, lit by dim emergency lights that flickered with every tremor. The walls were lined with monitors, maps, and weapons, the nerve center of the enemy's deadly scheme. Ghost moved to the main console, her fingers flying over buttons, pulling up data and transmissions. The room hummed with the weight of secrets and the promise of answers, but as they delved deeper, the team realized the enemy's reach was far greater than they had imagined. The operation was a web of lies and terror designed to cripple entire cities, and the clock was ticking fast. Suddenly, the radio went silent again. The familiar crackle replaced by static and then nothing. Ghost's face tightened with resolve, and she whispered words only the team could hear. The enemy had discovered their presence, and a counterattack was imminent. The bunker was a trap, and their extraction point was compromised. The SEALs readied themselves for a fight that would test every skill, every ounce of courage they possessed. The shadows in the bunker seemed to close in, and the faintest sound of footsteps echoed from the corridors beyond. Then the first shots rang out sharp and deadly, the enemy forcing their way into the heart of the stronghold. The SEALs responded instantly with a barrage of fire, suppressing the attackers. But the onslaught was relentless, and the bunker began to shake under the impact of explosives. The team fought back-to-back, moving through the maze of hallways, their senses honed on survival. Every corner held a new threat, every breath a gamble, their training pushed to the limits. But even with Ghost's guidance, the enemy was a step ahead, setting traps and ambushes that tested their resolve. Amidst the chaos, Ghost took up position covering the rear, her rifle singing death with every pull of the trigger. But then a deafening explosion tore through the bunker. The ground shook violently and the lights went out, plunging them into darkness. The radio went dead, and Ghost was silent. Her presence suddenly a void that threatened to swallow them whole. The A team was trapped in the darkness with enemies closing in and no way to call for backup. Their situation was desperate, and the weight of survival pressed down with crushing force. Then from the shadows, a faint flicker of light appeared, a signal from Ghost. Her voice crackled through the radio one last time, calm and unwavering. She gave coordinates for an emergency exit and a warning of what awaited outside. The SEALs moved as one, following the beacon through the darkness, their hearts pounding, with the knowledge that escape was only the beginning. The enemy was hunting them with a vengeance, and the jungle that once offered cover now became a maze of death and deception. Emerging from the bunker, they found themselves surrounded by enemy forces, the night alive with muzzle flashes and the roar of engines. The team split into smaller units, using every tactic to evade capture and strike back. The jungle exploded into a battlefield where every shadow could mean death and every moment counted. The SEALs moved with lethal precision, but the price was high wounds and exhaustion gnawed at their strength. Yet Ghost's presence was a rallying point, the hope that kept them fighting. As dawn broke, the team gathered at the rendezvous, point battered but alive. Ghost appeared suddenly from the trees, her face streaked with grime and pain, but her eyes burning with the fierce light of a survivor. She handed over critical intel that would change the course of the war, and with it, the promise of justice and retribution. But the mystery of her solo mission remained a shadow hanging over them, a question that would haunt the SEALs long after the battle was won. What had driven Ghost to face such peril alone, and what secrets did she carry hidden deep within her heart? The SEALs gathered in the first light of dawn, their bodies battered, their minds heavy with the weight of what they had endured. The jungle around them seemed to hold its breath as if mourning the battle that had raged through the night. Ghost stood apart, her gaze distant and unreadable. The intel she carried was a lifeline, a promise of victory, but also a reminder of the cost that had been paid. The team knew this mission had changed them forever. The lines between friend and enemy blurred in the shadows, and trust had become a precious commodity. With no time to rest, the SEALs prepared for the next phase, moving quickly to secure their extraction point. The jungle was still alive with danger. Enemy patrols roamed like ghosts, hunting for any sign of movement. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. The silence was thick, but it was a fragile calm, shattered at any moment by the crack of a rifle or the snap of a branch. Ghost led. The way her presence a steady flame in the darkness, yet the team sensed a secret. She held a burden she had yet to reveal. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, the SEALs faced relentless attacks from enemy forces desperate to prevent their escape. The firefights were brutal and unforgiving each moment, a battle for survival. Bullets whizzed past and explosions rocked the earth, but the team fought with the ferocity of cornered wolves, their training and camaraderie a shield against the chaos. But the price was evident in every grimace, every faltering step. Yet through it all, Ghost remained a figure of unshakable resolve, taking out threats with surgical precision and guiding the team with an almost supernatural instinct. But just as hope began to flicker, a deadly ambush caught them off guard. Hidden enemies erupted from the shadows surrounding the team with ruthless efficiency. The SEALs were forced into a desperate fight for their lives, pinned down with dwindling ammo and mounting injuries. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder as the enemy closed in relentlessly. The squad leader's voice was steady but urgent, rallying the men to hold their ground and await extraction. But the enemy's numbers seemed endless in the midst of the chaos. Ghost vanished once more, slipping away into the jungle like a wraith, leaving the team to face the onslaught alone. The SEALs fought fiercely, but the absence of their sniper was a gaping wound. The firefight raged on with no sign of reinforcements and the extraction window closing fast. The team was battered and bloodied, the line between survival and defeat, razor thin. Then just when all seemed lost, a series of sharp cracks rang out, cutting through the gunfire like thunder. Ghost returned like a tempest, a silent force of nature, her rifle singing death to every enemy that dared approach. With unmatched skill, she dismantled the ambush, one precise shot after another, carving a path through the chaos. Her sudden appearance was a turning point. The enemy faltered, and the SEALs seized the moment to push forward. The team moved as one towards the extraction point, hearts pounding and bodies screaming, but fueled by the fierce will to survive. As they reached the clearing, the extraction helicopter hovered, low blades chopping the air in a blur, but the danger was far from over. Enemy forces closed in fast, and the team formed a defensive perimeter, covering each other as they boarded the minutes. Stretched thin with every second a gamble, the SEALs knew that escape was not guaranteed. The helicopter's engines roared to life, lifting them above the battlefield, but the jungle below was still a maze of death and secrets. Safely in the air, the team finally exhaled, but the questions lingered like ghosts of the night. What had driven Ghost to take such risks alone? Why had she disappeared and returned only at the moments when all seemed lost?